Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Experience Maker Show. This is Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach, and I am so happy to have you here today for another episode where we get to talk to somebody who has become an experience maker in their organization, learn from them, and hopefully apply it to our own businesses starting tomorrow. So I am super excited today to introduce you to one of the really great guys in the business. And when I mean great, I just mean he's a good person. He's a person that brings happiness and joy to the world and always tries to make the world a better place. I had the pleasure of meeting him at a conference, I want to say last year. We'll get into that, but have been following him on Twitter, I think, since I've been on Twitter. So please welcome to the show the senior partner of Jackson and Wilson and the live video lawyer, Mitch Jackson. How you doing, man?
Hey, Dan, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on. Now you've raised the bar pretty high. I've got a pretty high expectation to live up to here.
Well, you know, we only bring the smartest people on this show because we want to learn something in every episode. And so don't worry, you've gotten through the filter already because you wouldn't be here otherwise. And so you're definitely somebody that I have learned a lot from. And I think what's so interesting, and I'm hoping you'll tell us a little bit about your background, is that you approach marketing, social media, customer experience from a little bit of a different perspective because you're an active practicing lawyer.
34 years, every single week, other than what we've been going through with COVID-19 over the last 6 or 7 months, in court litigating cases. But Dan, it's good to be here. And, I'm honored to call you a friend. I love the content you're creating on social media. And yeah, we look at social media and the digital platforms in a way that allows us to share our human side, maybe show a different side of who lawyers are and the value that we bring to our community. But it also allows us to answer consumer questions, 1 to 100 and 1 to 1,000, as opposed to when I started practicing back in 1986, no internet, no social media like we know it, obviously, and it was one-on-one across the desk. So I'm excited about where we are today. I'm excited about where social and digital is going, and I'm excited to be here with you today.
That's awesome, Mitch. I actually remember my first job out of college. You had to go to a central computer in order to get internet access because the computers on our desk didn't have it. You had to go to that special one to get internet access. So we've definitely come a long way. Our mutual friend, Chris Straub, is in the house. He says, so
Nice.
Awesome to see you. Thank you, Chris. Always great to see you as well. And I understand that you are with my former colleague, Jan from Humana. So, hey, Jan, thank you for tuning in as well. And we have Daniel Jaffe, who's also here. Good to meet you as well. Always happy to meet another Dan or Daniel or Danny, whichever, take your pick. But if you are watching, and we got Ryan Baker in the house. Thank you, sir. So if you're watching and something that Mitch says or even something that I say creates a question in your mind and you'd like to ask a question, just drop it right into the comments in any channel that you're on, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and we will definitely get to your question later in the conversation. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Mitch, so you mentioned 34 years you've been practicing law. The technology has really grown in that time. And what I think is so interesting about what you do is you are somebody that really leverages technology, which, let's be honest, I think we can be honest with each other, that is not always what we think about when we think about lawyers. We sometimes think they're stuck in their ways and maybe not using technology, but you've actually really embraced it. So tell us a little bit about being the live video lawyer and some of the other ways that you're leveraging it.
Well, normally when the word lawyer comes up in a sentence, there are a lot of things that people think about, and not too many of them are favorable, right? I get it. I'm a first-generation lawyer in my family, first one in my immediate family to go to college and graduate from college. And I think maybe to start off with my journey, just to put things into context, maybe with a customer or client experience component, what I'd like to do, because it's so good, is you were kind enough in my book, okay, The Ultimate Guide to Social Media. You were kind enough, Dan. Check this out. Dan was kind enough, you guys, to contribute chapter 44. And I've got it circled. And Dan's chapter was how professionals can win at social client care. And the reason I can promote this book is out of the 52 chapters, I only wrote 6 of them. 46 experts like Dan from around the world contributed chapters, and that's what makes this book so good. And if you don't mind, Dan, just to kind of lay a foundation, I'd like to read the first couple of sentences of your chapter.
Oh my goodness.
It actually applies to today's show, you guys. So let me put on my reading glasses. Hey, I'm 63 years old, you guys. This is hard to read. But what Dan wrote is the advent of social media brought worlds of opportunity to professionals who are using social media to market their practices, but it also brought something new and something somewhat frightening. Social is the only channel where the clients, patients, and customers together, I'll be referring to those people as clients, can talk back. This initially took professionals by surprise, and they weren't equipped to handle the deluge of client inquiries, complaints, and the conversation. And I'm paraphrasing. That's how you started off this book, Dan. And I think for the professionals out there, professional service industry individuals, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, a CPA, whether you're a small business owner, but you're in the professional services consulting businesses, it's a challenge, right? It's something that a lot of us have never had to deal with before. And one of the reasons to embrace social, Dan, and your initial paragraph in this chapter is so important, is that I want the personal service industries, regardless of what you do, to understand that, in my opinion, personal services, the human aspect of what we do, that's what the customer experience is all about in the personal services industry. That's what it's all about. All else being equal, as a lawyer, you know the law, procedure, the evidence, you understand what issues need to be argued. The way you connect with your clients, the way you create that exemplary client experience is through showing your human side, through creating and taking the additional steps of making it personal, of being there for the clients when they need you in the way that they want to hear from you. And if you don't mind, Dan, can I go back in time to growing up on a guest ranch in Tucson, Arizona? Because
this is your show, Mitch. Take it anywhere you want.
I've never shared this before. I've never shared this before in the detail that I'm going to, but I know we only have 30 minutes. So I'm going to give you the 21-year version in a minute and a half. But basically, I grew up on a ranch, you guys, in Tucson, Arizona. At 6 months of age, I was riding with my dad horseback, sitting in front of him up in the Tucson mountains. And I grew up riding horses and barrel racing my whole life. A couple other things I did, because it's relevant to what we're talking about today, is I was also a nationally ranked tennis player. When I rolled into high school as a freshman, I played #1 varsity. Played football and baseball in high school. When I looked up at A Mountain, which was next to our high school, I was watching the hang gliders fly off of A Mountain. It's 110, 115 degrees and full pads down on the field. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to be up doing this in the cool desert breeze. So by 18 or 19, my buddy and I were both Hang 4 expert rated hang glider pilots.
Wow.
Used to do a lot of scuba diving down in the Sea of Cortez with my dad when I was 15 and 16 and thereafter. That's when we learned. And, received my open water certification, deep dive, night dive certifications, grew up windsurfing and sailboarding around California and Arizona. I was placed second in the Arizona state championships for windsurfing back in the day, raced competitive motocross for 38 years, just sold my Honda CRF 450 a couple of years ago because it started hurting too much. Every time I'd fall, I can't bounce back up. And, did a lot of hiking and exploring mines throughout Arizona over the years growing up. The reason I'm doing all of this with you is I want you to know more about me as a human being. Happily married for 32 years, 2 great kids, 25 and 26. And 20, our oldest, our daughter is a lawyer. And what I found is that when you are in the personal services industry, the more you can relate to your clients, the better they know you, the easier it is to connect, the easier it is to build relationships, the easier it is to have them take your hand and listen to your advice so that you can guide them down the right path to success in their case. The reason I just brought all of that up is I want everyone to just kind of pause for a second and take a step back. Do you all feel like you know me a little better than you did when Dan introduced me as a lawyer? In other words, it's been an interesting life that I've led. And what I've noticed, Dan, is for those people out there that have either dived or play tennis or sports, or maybe they've hang glided, maybe they enjoy sailboarding or windsurfing, maybe they enjoy hiking and running. Those are the types of people that connect with me when they're looking for lawyers, because I share this stuff on social media. And those are the types of clients that we enjoy representing. I told you one of the things I was going to talk about today, and I've never talked about before, is one of the pivots, one of the shifts that we're making right now in 2020 and 2021 is we are purposefully going to be narrowing down our client base to other people that enjoy the same hobbies and passions and interests that we enjoy doing. Okay, we're already connecting in Facebook groups and on Twitter and Twitter lists and things like this, where we have this common interest. And I would love to represent people that enjoy stand-up paddleboarding or down at the motocross tracks in Southern California. I just like being around these people. So I think as a professional, by sharing your hobbies and interests and passions, it allows you to connect and create better client experiences, all else being equal. And that's why I wanted to start today off with that short version story, because I think it's super important for us to get to know each other better.
I love that, Mitch, because everybody has a story. And, you may not think your story is as interesting as everybody else's, but it probably is if you figure out how to tell it. And, this reminds me, when I got out of college, one of the things that I did, and then for years after that, and I still recommend this to people, I always had at the bottom of my resume a couple of items that had nothing to do with work. So I had I
Absolutely.
don't know, I called it like miscellaneous or whatever. And I remember when I first got out of college, the two things that I had were number one, that I was a licensed bartender, and number two, that I was a huge fan of The Simpsons. I will tell you that almost every single job interview I went on, the very first question was either about cocktails or The Simpsons. And it immediately made me feel relaxed, but it immediately established a relationship between interviewer and interviewee that I think made me perform better in the interview, right? Because it just was a
Absolutely.
personal thing versus diving right into tell me about your experience. So I always suggest that when people talk about themselves, even in a very formal document like a resume, that you include something about yourself that's interesting. In my bio that I have event planners read when I go on stage, I mention the bartending. I also mention that I'm a pinball wizard because I love playing pinball. I have 5 machines in my
Really?
basement.
Really?
And so it's the same kind of thing that, it just every once in a while you'll find somebody and they'll be like, I love pinball too. And now it's something that you can talk about and relate with. And I think that's just awesome. I love it. So I want to slightly pivot back
Yeah.
because although I loved your story, I don't think you answered my question. So I want to ask the question again, which is, how are you leveraging technology in your practice? I know that you told me, for folks watching, I always ask people to give me a story that I'm supposed to remind you about. And the story that you told me to remind you about had to do with you communicating with a client via text, because that's what they asked for. And that leading to it to being a really, really big client for you.
Yes, thanks for taking us back over to focus on, but what's interesting is you just said something, Dan, about being a bartender. I help young trial lawyers litigate their cases, and they come in and watch me give an opening statement or a closing argument. How did you know how to do that, Mitch? How did you know to press that button? Here's the thing: bartending, working the front door, and being a waiter in college. I get it. See, you mentioned that, and you learn people skills, and you learn how to read an audience, and learn how to read a jury. So the fact that you just mentioned bartending totally connected us on a whole nother level, Dan.
Oh, and delivering pizzas, I would add to that, is that
you got to know how to get it done, right?
exactly.
So one of the things that we've always done is, one of the reasons I brought up all those things that I've enjoyed doing over the years is I failed at all of those, right? Crashed, burned, gotten hurt. I'm certainly not an expert at any of those anymore. But what I learned is that you dust yourself off, you get up and you keep moving forward. And I think on social media and on digital, Dan, especially for the professionals out there, you need to do the same thing. In other words, by embracing these platforms, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you're not going to get anybody reading your blog post or responding to a tweet, and that's okay. The sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. So what we started doing is we took the mentality of all of these hobbies and passions that I grew up doing, and everybody else in the firm has similar interests, and we rolled all of that over into digital and social. We embraced texting early on. We embraced live video back in 2011 and 2012. We weren't afraid about how we came across. We just wanted to be ourselves, do our best. And frankly, we're all human beings. We all have our imperfections, but it allowed us to really connect and build our brand from a local brand to a global brand. The case you're talking about is we had somebody come into the office, and this is back when texting was fairly new with respect to professionals using text messages. And she was concerned because she wasn't able to communicate with her lawyer. Her lawyer was using the phone and snail mail, and she wanted to use text. And so they weren't connecting and they weren't communicating back and forth. She told me her story, and I said, listen, I know who the other lawyer is. He's really good at what he does. Let me pick up the phone and talk to him. Long story short, on the phone in front of the client, although we were not on the speaker, he said, Mitch, she's all yours. She doesn't communicate with me. I don't want anything to do with the case. And so we went ahead and substituted into the case. And I said, how would you like us to communicate with you? And she goes, text. I want a text. That's how I'm a student. I don't have a permanent address. I'm bouncing all over the place. I can't stand email. And so that's what we did. And by agreeing to communicate with that client on a platform in the way that she wanted us to communicate with her, pursuant to California State Bar rules, it allowed us to bring in a new file, which ended up being a 7-figure case that we were able to get settled. A very, very happy client who I stay in contact with today via texting. And it's all about professionals where now, Dan, when someone leaves our office after we're retained, the most important question we ask is, how would you like us to communicate with you? If they want us to communicate with them on Twitter DM or Microsoft Messenger or some other private message service, whether it's whatever it might be, we try to accommodate them and communicate with them in that way. That's what gets put into our CRM. We can't always do that because of state bar rules, but we talk to the clients about that. And what we found, especially now in this COVID-19 world, is using platforms like Zoom, using live videos, using platforms like BombBomb, which is, for those of you not familiar with BombBomb, it's fantastic. I am not a brand ambassador for BombBomb. I pay for the service, but it allows you to quickly and easily create an email video within your email platform, or when you're out and about, using one of these, where the recipient of your email is able to view the video right within the email. He or she doesn't have to click away to watch the video. They can also click a link and BombBomb or video you back without an account. And what we found is this really has allowed us to connect on a human level, eye-to-eye, digital eye-to-eye contact with the client, Dan. And those, in addition to communicating with the client how they like to be communicated with, and using Zoom, using live video, using BombBomb, it's been a game changer for the platform, especially right now where I think clients, customers, and the consumer, they value that human touch that we can deliver through video and live video.
That's incredible, Mitch. And if you compare that to the type of communication that we often get from companies or professional services, which is almost invariably going to be email, maybe direct mail. It's going to be impersonal. You're not necessarily going to see their face. I remember working with a lawyer once where I never knew what she looked like because I never saw her. Right.
Really?
And so,
Wow.
you're establishing this relationship, which I think is so important. And I'm reminded of a question that I answered in my own book that people ask me all the time, which is, well, if I want to get into social media, what channel should I be in? And the answer I always give them is disappointing. It's whatever channels your customers are in. There is no right answer. So when I worked for Humana, and our main product was Medicare Advantage, and we focused on seniors 65 and older, it was okay that we weren't on Snapchat, right? No one cared. But we needed to be on Facebook because we know grandma and grandpa are on Facebook. So it depends on who your customers are. If you're targeting teens or you're targeting young adults, then yeah, you better be thinking about Snapchat and TikTok and some of these others. So you got to go where your customers are, and instead of asking them to come to where you are. That's a mistake most companies make.
And in addition to that, where are your referrals coming from? In other words, if most of our incoming new clients are personal referrals from past clients, from opposing counsel, from local judges, from claims adjusters we've handled claims with. If you're not on these platforms, you're taking away an opportunity to have someone refer that case to you. And I think it's really, really important to think of these platforms as welcome mats. Assuming you're going about embracing these platforms correctly and sharing the right kind of helpful, useful, engaging, intriguing, unique content, which is what video allows you to do, I think it makes all the difference in the world, Dan. Agree 100%. Here's a little tip for those of you, and by the way, I know it's different if you're a huge company, you're a Fortune 500 company. The personal branding aspect of that when it comes to client experience is different than what I'm talking about. But most businesses in the United States are small businesses, right? And when it comes to lawyers and doctors and CPAs, most of us are smaller companies where you can embrace this personal CX, customer experience opportunity. One thing I do is instead of returning phone calls or responding to emails, what I'll do, Dan, is I'll make a mental note. Okay, here's 6 people that reached out to me yesterday I need to get back to. When I go on a morning run, I'll pull this out and I'll go ahead and just shoot 30 to 60 second video responses using this, or I'll stop because my GoPro has a digital stabilizer, so the video is pretty clean while you're running. I'll just stop and shoot a 30-second video response either on my phone or on BombBomb, and I'll share that response via video to that incoming message. The clients love that, right? They love the fact that you're taking the time to personalize that experience, especially when I'm walking into the courthouse or walking into a deposition, and I can do that while I'm walking into the courthouse and they see the courthouse maybe behind me over my left shoulder. Right now with COVID-19, I'm doing this while I'm running and paddleboarding. Every day I'm sending probably 5 to 10 personal messages out in response to client inquiries that I know other lawyers aren't doing. And it's not only more effective to connect, but it's fun to do. I don't know how many lawyers after 34 years of practice that are excited to get out of bed and go to work in the morning. I still am. And it's because I'm embracing this technology that you write about and you talk about all the time. I'm embracing it into the practice of law, and it makes practicing law fun again.
I love it. And again, I'm going to mention your book, The Ultimate Guide to Social Media for Business Owners, Professionals, and Entrepreneurs. And Mitch did something really cool here. He got 47 people to write chapters in this book. I had the pleasure of writing one of them. So definitely check out this book. We have some great comments and questions coming in from the audience, Mitch. So I'd like to share a few with you.
Super nice.
Luis Clemente Jimenez, thank you so much. I know that you watch almost every week and you comment relating to others, making relationships stronger. That's why it's so important for companies and organizations to start humanizing the relations with their customers. Not an easy thing to do when you're a big enterprise, but you better start before it's too late. I totally agree, Luis. And you know what? We can't do it because we're too big excuse. I'm tired of it. I worked at McDonald's and I heard that excuse all the time. We can't respond to people in social media because we're too big. What do you mean? Why not? It's not that you can't respond. It's that you've decided not to respond. You've decided not to invest the money into the resources to respond. And so you can, even if you're a big company, you just have to want to. And I worked for another big company, Discover, where it was a top priority to respond to all customers. And so we did it, and customers liked us. And little known fact, Discover still has the longest tenured customers in the credit card industry. Really? Almost no one would get that answer right, especially someone on the West Coast, because I know Discover isn't as popular on the West Coast. We also got a couple of questions.
My first credit card ever, just so you know.
Oh, nice job, Mitch. Nice. Yeah. I knew I liked you. A couple of questions from our friend Ryan Baker. Social media's come a long way with legal. What's your view on how legal should be involved in social? Do you think that companies should have social media practiced lawyers, if there is such a thing? And do you think that legal teams need to take a backseat on crafting messages to consumers for customer service reasons because it may come off as too legal? Great question, Ryan.
Well, it's interesting because it's so important. It's so important. Just because you can set up a free platform or purchase an inexpensive cloud-based software to help you generate content and push it out to the world, just because you see everybody else using images and videos that they actually didn't create or obtain a license to create their content, doesn't mean it's legal. It doesn't mean it's okay. I'll tell you right now, the biggest issue I have with social, Dan, is that the legal component to what we're all supposed to be doing, and this also includes doing business online. The rules aren't being followed. This is something that's very, very important, you guys. You have to understand the legal implications of setting up companies and intellectual property rights. And just because everybody else is doing something doesn't mean it's actually legal to do. And what I do see happening is I see the FCC, the FTC, I see private and public litigation actually substantially increasing and holding people accountable that aren't following the rules. So I think there needs to be a tighter integration between legal compliance and crafting that creative, engaging social media, campaign so that everything's covered. And I think you can do it.
So yeah, I want to add on to that, and we're running a little bit short on time, but I think where Ryan was going here, because I worked in corporate America as well, and Ryan is there right now, is that oftentimes the legal teams in a corporation have little to no knowledge about social media. And then as a marketer, you're trying to get copy approved, you're trying to get different campaigns approved. I remember like it was yesterday. I won't tell you which company it was that I worked for, but having to go to the legal department with some tweets to get approved. And they came back with all these corrections. And of course, their corrections made the tweets 400 characters long. It was like, wait a second, we're clearly missing each other here. And so I think his question is really interesting about, how do we do a better job if we aren't a big company? How do we do a better job of educating? I always said, look, to my teams who would be frustrated with the lawyers, I would say, look, those people's jobs are to keep us out of jail. So we better like them and treat them well. But sometimes we have to educate them because they're not on, they don't even have a Facebook account. They don't know anything about this stuff. And yet they're being asked to approve it. So anything you can think of in terms of advice for somebody in corporate America?
Absolutely. You want to keep it simple. So as long as it's truthful, as long as it's not misleading, as long as you're complying with state and federal rules and regulations in the content that you're creating and putting out, as long as you have intellectual property rights in the videos and pictures and logos that are accompanying the content that you're creating and sharing out, whether it's directly or through comments and replies, you're probably going to be okay. But once again, each case is different. My best man, Dan, is a very successful commercial real estate guy. And I remember him telling me, Mitch, you lawyers always screw up all my deals. We've got everything lined up, ready to go. And then the lawyers get involved and we cross the T's and dot the I's and everything gets put on hold. Here's the thing. It's super important that we comply with all state and federal rules, laws, and regulations. So make sure you find someone in your state that you can trust, that understands social, that can take you by the hand and guide you in the right direction. Just because this is a new frontier and it's complicated, but that doesn't mean we can ignore the legal ramifications of what we're putting out there. My last takeaway that's super important, Dan, is for the professionals out there that are getting involved with social media, whether it's to take care of their customers, their clients, whatever it might be, focus on keeping things real and focus on the engagement side of the content. It's one thing to post and push out. It's another thing to engage and answer and reply and really build those relationships through the social platforms. I think that's super important. That's where a lot of my dear friends that are gifted professionals in the courtroom or at the hospital or at the accounting agency, they're great at creating content, not so good at engaging afterwards. So focus on the engagement, focus on the relationships, focus on the human side of what everyone's doing. And I think that's the best way to position yourself for long-term success, not only on social media, but also in your business and in life.
Totally agree. And I'm putting up here a comment from Chris Trubb, which is kind of where I started with you. I do think you're a great human being first and a lawyer second. One thing I just want to add to what Mitch said about the legalities is that the laws also are always changing because a lot of them have not been written with social media in mind. When I spent 2 years in healthcare, at least at the time, HIPAA, which is the main privacy law, doesn't even mention the word social media or Facebook in it. I read all of it. and there are no rules. So that means it's left to interpretation, which can be confusing, which can be risky. And that's why you do always have to have somebody with a legal mind by your side to help you out. Mitch, I could talk to you for hours more. This is always the fastest half an hour of my week, but really a lot of fun and such a smart guy. Please follow Mitch at Mitch Jackson on Twitter. Connect with him on LinkedIn. You will. He puts out amazing content, sometimes from the paddleboard, sometimes from running, but all of the time something that you can learn and take back to your organization. So thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
All right, next week we will have another all-star, because that's all we do on the shows. We bring all-stars on the show. Probably you gotta he's up on the list of the Godfather of Customer Experience Award, which is Mr. Scott McCain. He's a Hall of Fame speaker, author, multi-time author, super nice guy. He was a radio host. He has one of the best, deepest voices in the world. He will be another fantastic interview and another experience maker. Can't wait to bring you that next week. Thank you so much for everybody who joined us this week. Thank you for your questions. Please, if you like this show, do me a favor, tell a friend about it, tell a colleague, and I'd love for them to experience it as well. For now, I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach. You've been watching The Experience Maker, which is on every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on the channel that you're watching, which is likely either Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We're here. Thank you so much. Have a terrific weekend.